If I were Amazon and I was trying to push through something that I know was going to upset people, I wouldn't really share any information with this trailer. I would tease it just enough that people will be like, okay, it looks interesting, it looks cool, it's flashy. Maybe a minute tops. Not give anything about the story, not really say anything, so that I can delay the huge amount of backlash and prevent anyone from boycotting the show as much as possible until it's released. Because then once it's released and people see it and then we go, yep, it's exactly what we thought it would be. It's absolute trash. I can't believe they've done this. How could they do this? Now we're going to have to wait like another decade until like the IP cools down enough again that we can get another shot at it. But by that point, once we've all seen it, everyone's like, they're all complaining in their little isolated echo chambers. And it's not as effective as if they just say, hey, this is what we're doing. And then everyone goes, no, we're not doing that. And then they lose a whole bunch of money at the box office. Not that Amazon even cares about losing money at the box office. Like the whole go woke, go broke thing doesn't work because people pursue that which is most valuable, not that which is most profitable. So it's much more valuable for them to corrupt Lord of the Rings than it is profitable for them to corrupt Lord of the Rings. And they're doing it anyway. That should tell you something. These people aren't stupid.
Remember when I said that the only way to prevent bad adventurers from abusing power in guilds or government is to train new good adventurers and then let their power keep the evil in check? Well, here we are. The shadow that bred them can only mock. It cannot make not new, real things of its own. This quote and paraphrases of it have been absolutely blasting the new Rings of Power trailer, and rightfully so, because everyone of every persuasion and distinction is seemingly united on the one front to oppose that which is likely going to be a desecration of a beloved world. Everyone is ripping the new trailer to shreds, calling it woke, calling it full of identity politics, etc. But here's the thing. The trailer is literally a distraction. Criticizing it is a red herring. It does not tell us everything, and that is on purpose. Well, what about the moose people? They look ridiculous. It doesn't matter. Maybe they're just on their way back from the hunt and they're carrying the most valuable part of the animal. It's irrelevant. The only argument that cannot be refuted, and therefore the one that we must make, is that Amazon blatantly disrespects the lore, and by extent Tolkien's legacy. Their marketing arms in the media are openly hostile, and like almost every other subverted IP in the entire past decade, they hate you and they want to see you replaced. This is bigger than the show itself. Whether or not it is good or bad is secondary to the fact that there is a war being waged to demonize fans and oust them from their own fandoms. And because Amazon itself has not come out and openly denounced the hit pieces put out by the media, we can only assume that they are complicit. So in light of that, I'm going to go through every single argument I have seen in defense of Amazon and their destruction of Middle-earth, saying why the fans of the books or the movies are wrong, or expectations are too high, or we're toxic, or we're not real fans, or whatever. And I'm going to dismantle them using allegories from the Lord of the Rings itself, in an effort to arm you against the attacks, which will no doubt be continuously made against us leading up to, during, and then after the release of the show. It's going to be fun. So we will unravel once and for all the strategy and systematic destruction of stories and their fandoms. If you have ever said or thought these things, please know that I am not attacking you. I, unlike Amazon, do not want to attack you. I don't want to belittle you. I like you, and I think that you're very smart, and I want you to stay. And I hope that I can change some people's minds and get them to stand for Tolkien's legacy rather than biding their time or defending a faceless conglomerate, a machine of corporate shills. So when I say you, I am arguing against a theoretical opponent that I assume that we are all against. And this is an open letter to Amazon and all Hollywood executives that think that they are above criticism or above the source material and think that they have the right to slander fans. And I genuinely hope that they see this. I do not doubt that there are some members of the team and of the cast that are very passionate and excited to have worked on this. I know I would be. So I do not by any means endorse attacking them personally. The concept art for the War for the Rohirrim anime looks really good. It gives me great faith. Also based on who was working on it, which is a lot of the members from the original Peter Jackson's trilogy. And I do not want them to feel threatened or discouraged by this backlash because they do not deserve it. This is a defense of Lord of the Rings and of fandoms who in good faith accepted all into their clubs out of love and then slowly found themselves pushed out and then mocked by the shadow, the very people who used inclusion as a Trojan horse in order to be invited in the first place. It's going to be impossible to do this this without sounding somewhat political. Honestly, Lord of the Rings shouldn't be political. That is kind of the point. But defending it has been turned into a political act. Amazon started it. I'm just going to finish it. I am very well versed on the tactics of these people. I study it to the same ludicrous degree that I study fantasy and medieval history. So I want to warn you that it is not the best tactic to attack the show for being woke. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means to have an injected or fourth wall breaking socio-political commentary generally reflective of postmodern thought. I think we can all agree that we don't want modern politics injected into The Lord of the Rings. And while the prediction that the show is going to be woke garbage is perhaps a correct point, it is not a strategic one, because many people who might have otherwise agreed with you don't understand the terminology and are going to be alienated. It is possible, however unlikely, that the goal is for us to swing at the woke target and then miss, if the script itself is not explicitly so, leading to comments of, oh, well, see, you actually are racist because you thought that the show was going to be woke and it isn't. You're paranoid. It might sound crazy, but do consider the bully who goads and prods you into swinging at him first, just as the teacher happens to be walking around the corner, and then only you get in trouble. The world is watching. This is a trap that we must be wary of. There is no reason that this should be a divisive topic, because the diversity of the people that are taking a stand against Amazon is ironically more diverse than the cast of the show. And we have to entertain the idea that, at least for now, the show may actually be good. That both sides, those calling everyone all sorts of ists, phobes, and isms, and also those complaining about the show, are both completely overreacting, and the show itself is just caught in the middle. Not a lot of evidence exists to point to this being the case, but I specifically waited and went through many iterations of this script because I wanted to avoid being reactionary in favor of being rational. So I can only hope that my articulacy is enough to garner the good faith of the people in the interpretation of what it is that I am about to say. So sit back, relax, and take a drink of whatever suits your fancy whenever I make a Lord of the Rings reference, because you've already missed a couple, so let's get started. What Amazon seems to have done with the privilege of creating a new screen adaptation of The Lord of the Rings is literally the equivalent of receiving the ring and then immediately putting it on because they think that they have the power to control it. They like Lord of the Rings not because they actually like the story or the world or the characters, but because they like the potential it has to package and market a certain ideology. And this is not even controversial to say. They don't like Lord of the Rings. They like the idea of liking Lord of the Rings. And if anyone calls it out, they just gaslight us by calling us toxic fans, say there is no place for us, etc. So why are we so forgiving of them, making preemptive excuses for why we should lower our expectations or why we're wrong for demanding excellence, that if it's bad, it's actually our fault? Abusive relationship, check. Instead of extending an olive branch, being transparent with the fans who are raising perfectly valid concerns about contradicting the lore, they attack us because they can't help themselves. They have contempt for us, and that should be the biggest red flag. They know that what they have isn't going to be good, that it's going to accept a large portion of the fans, what I would consider to be the real fans. Yeah, it's gatekeeping. So what? Remember the Trojan horse? They don't even need one if we just leave the gates wide open. When your enemy stands before your walls and demands that you open the gates for them, otherwise you're being mean, you should tell them no. I'm not an idiot. Just read about subversion tactics, read Sun Tzu, it's literally textbook. They infiltrate with small numbers, masking their intentions with kind words and fancy gestures and assurances and plausible deniability, and then they wait till the last minute and open the floodgates and then dominate the opposition. It happens literally every time. Oh, we love Tolkien. We love the lore. We have Tolkien Tolkien experts on our team. They tease out trailers that are designed to mitigate backlash and tell you absolutely nothing about their intentions. They create hype, and then boom, a consumer class of viewers is created, which completely washes out the voices of the fans, and then another IP is conquered. Literally happened to Star Wars, and J.J. Abrams recommended the two writers that are writing the Amazon Rings show. It's so obvious. Orcs roam freely across our lands, unchecked, unchallenged, killing at will. And the Grima deflects. Nothing is happening. Your friends are your enemies, Theoden King. Why are you warmongering? And then he removes Éomer with a clearly bogus signature using the king, who is unable to speak for himself, like a puppet. They literally have to wait until Gandalf and all of his cool friends arrive to solve the problem, because everyone is too afraid to do something because they can't prove that Grima is evil. I wonder if that reminds me of anything that the showrunners have done, twisting Tolkien's words when now he's departed into the West and unable to defend himself. So weird. They need to avoid any grassroots boycott of the show, because they know if they allow enough time for a resistance, a last alliance of men and elves to build, that they don't stand a chance. Amazon can't come out right and say what their agenda is. They have to do it through proxies like Vanity Fair, because if they're too on the nose, if they lose their plausible deniability, then the fans are going to snap harder than they already have. They need you to trust them in spite of your instincts. All press is good press, unless the press is so bad that nobody actually watches the show. Bad ratings don't hurt nearly as bad as no viewers at all. Even if you watch it just to see the dumpster fire burn, they're still going to get paid, and you're teaching them that they can do whatever they want and get away with it, because the only consequence is going to be a couple of people complaining online. And so they say that anyone who has a problem with the show is just threatened or racist or sexist or whatever. And I don't need to defend myself from that, because I literally don't care what you think. You have no power here. All we want is for things to fit the story and the lore and make sense. The Shadow of War messed with the lore an awful lot, but Baranor, formerly of Harad, was captain of Gondor's army in Minas Ithil. Eltariel was the Blade of Galadriel, and she kicked ass, and both were woven into the story in a way that was believable. There are 13 other arguments that I'm now going to completely destroy, one for each of Thorin's company. You can't compare Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings to Amazon's, because they aren't the same thing. First, I'm going to explain why we can, and then I'm going to explain why we should. It is perfectly reasonable to compare these two, even if they aren't the same thing, because it would be ludicrous to walk into a market that already existed with a brand new product and then demand that all of the people that were already shopping forget everything that already existed and then give you their full attention, or furthermore buy your product even if it's inferior, simply because then they would have more. Amazon really set themselves up for failure, because they aren't attempting to be canon with Peter Jackson's movies, and just based on the amount of lore that they've changed and removed, they clearly aren't going to be canon with the books either, so they can't even capitalize on the nostalgia of returning to Middle-earth, because it's a brand new thing. Peter Jackson's trilogy is the Lord of the Rings adapted to screen. You cannot argue that. And the trilogy was perfect, not because it was just more Lord of the Rings content, but because of the blood and the sweat and the tears and the love that went into every observable facet and detail of that handcrafted world. Lord of the Rings always gets a pass, not because it bears the name of the franchise, but because it actually deserves it. I'm a fan. I'm not a clapping seal. I do not yet consider the Amazon show to be the Lord of the Rings. They don't earn that just because they own the rights to the IP. I've seen things I like, and I have seen things that I don't, but I cannot in good conscience support a company that is comfortable attacking its own fans. It's not in my nature to assume malice, and I've second-guessed myself an awful lot thinking about this, but when someone is hitting you in the face repeatedly, you have to do something. Well, maybe it will just get new people into Lord of the Rings, just like the movies did. Maybe, but it's not going to create new fans, it's going to create new consumers. The books and Jackson's trilogy hold up the same today as the day that they were released. They aren't obscure. If you were really interested, you could go right now and watch The Lord of the Rings and you would enjoy it. And if you didn't, then the Amazon show probably wouldn't have changed that. Instead of allowing that competition to drive their decisions and earn respect for the product they're actually trying to get me to buy, instead they just create something substandard and generic and then bully me with insults if I don't like the inferior product that they were so gracious to offer me. Oh, thank you, billionaire overlords, for giving me more content to binge. I can't wait to look at the attractive screen people. If you weren't interested in watching critically acclaimed films that won over 400 awards and twice as many nominations that have been out for the past 2 decades, or you weren't interested in reading the books that captured the hearts and minds of generations before that, then you probably weren't that interested in the first place. And if the series is bad, which it probably will be, the best that you could say for it is that it inspired new appreciation for the books and Jackson's trilogy, not because of the Amazon show, but in spite of it. And if that's the best that you could say, then why not spend $1 billion just marketing those? Well, the showrunner's answer is that they think that they can do it better. They think that they can write the story that Tolkien never wrote. But you cannot wield it. None of us can. The Lord of the Rings belongs to Tolkien alone. It has no other master. If you actually wanted to do that, if you had the budget of $1 billion, why not actually create the story that Tolkien never wrote by writing your own story? The budget for the movies is still higher, which is to say that TV shows can never be compared to movies because of budgeting or form, etc. I had the exact same thing said to me when I compared the Witcher TV show to The Lord of the Rings. So let's do some math. The entire runtime for the 3 extended movies is 11.5 hours, 682 minutes. The total budget for all 3 films was $281 million, not accounting for inflation. We'll get to that in a second, meaning that approximately each minute of the original films cost $412,023 to make. Assuming that The Rings of Power has 10 approximately 60-minute episodes, that is 600 minutes, with a budget of $462 million for the first season, that is $707,000 per minute. Even accounting for inflation between 2000 and today, which is approximately 62%, that still puts the budget for all three of Peter Jackson's masterpieces at $667,478 a minute, which is still less than the Amazon show. So just like comparing The Witcher and The Lord of the Rings, Amazon, like Netflix, is not some poor outclassed underdog. Accounting for inflation, the full extended trilogy had a total budget of $449,600,000. That is literally less than the entire budget for the first season of the Amazon show, which has $1 billion for all of the seasons and technically infinite resources given that it's Amazon funding it. And they have access to better technology, 20 years better technology than what it had to forge from scratch with its own two hands. But as we know, evil cannot create, it can only destroy. Adaptations are never the same as the source material. That is true, potentially, but there is a right way to do it and there is a wrong way to do it. Peter Jackson's changes helped tell the story better on screen than if it had been 100% faithful, and we could debate the merits of that, but even Tolkien purists by majority seem to accept Jackson's trilogy as the accomplishment that it is, even if they take issue with some of the changes. But Peter Jackson had the humility to not add certain things to the movies, and every time I watch the making of and I listen to what he and his team decided not to add, I just think, thank God they had the wisdom to do this. Like literally having Arwen sing out loud when she sees the vision of her and Aragorn's son, or having Aragorn fight Sauron at the end. They correctly understood that this was not the correct choice for the story. Saying adaptations are always different is using a truth to excuse bad adaptations. I don't think that just because someone or an entity owns the rights to a franchise and the name of a franchise, that should give them full artistic freedom to do whatever they want. And if they choose to do that, then that still doesn't put them above criticism. And if they further choose to respond to that criticism by lashing out at the fans and attacking them, then that isn't something that is worthy of respect. It doesn't matter what you change so long as you remain true to the theme. But as the theme progressed, it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar, for he sought therein to increase the power and glory of the part assigned to himself. If I wrote an adaptation of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and I kept the name and I kept the key, therefore keeping the theme, I kept all the same notes, but then I changed all of the instruments to trumpets, it wouldn't be the same thing, and it wouldn't be as good. Practice empathy for those with less opportunity than you. Why are you so threatened by Latino elves? Which is something that was literally said by people associated with the show. There can't be Latino elves, not in Tolkien's work anyway. Elves are already a different race than humans, and we know that as the viewer. It does not make sense that elves and humans would have completely different characteristics from each other. Reflexes, lifespan, culture, magical affinity, height, facial features, and then also exist on the exact same ethnic spectrum. You cannot have a Hispanic elf, or an Asian elf, or a black elf for the same reason that you cannot have a German elf, because elves are elves. We can't cast actual elves because they no longer exist. So the only thing that we can do is cast people that look like elves as Tolkien described them. Insert cope here about how your degree allows you to read in between the lines to see what Tolkien's true vision was because it's the current year or whatever. It has been pointed out everywhere that there are cultures in Middle-earth with what might be described as diverse people, as if Europeans in and of themselves are not capable of being culturally diverse. The Lord of the Rings reenactment community is filled with people of every distinction, and I have literally never seen anyone complain about that. We are all coming together to honor Tolkien's work, but even then, anyone who's being an elf generally makes some attempt at having long hair. We do the best we can, but we don't have $1 billion to spend on our budgets. But at the same time, we're also not asserting that what we do is canon and then forcing it on all of the other fans. We're just doing it for fun. Listen, I'm an actor. I love The Lord of the Rings, but I am also not selfish enough to think that I must be the person to tell that story, because I am not owed that. No actor is owed any role. On the one hand, I wouldn't want a show I was in to be accused of being woke if it wasn't simply because I was in it, though I would understand that complaint given the current climate that we're in. Far more damaging to me, though, I would hate to live the rest of my life looking over my shoulder if I get cast in something wondering, well, was I cast in this because I actually fit the role, because I actually have the skill necessary to tell the story, or because some casting director thought that they were doing me this huge favor because I've never had opportunities before because of the color of of my skin and then thought they would make themselves look good and righteous in the process. I know that people mean well, but think of what a terrible position that is to put someone in. It is much easier to hear that I don't fit a role than that I was only cast in something because it filled a quota. And then if the encouraged response to anyone that criticizes me is to call those people racist, then any praise or accolades that I receive is potentially entirely a lie. And my validation as an actor and my work is dependent completely on people that feel like they owe me pity. I want to know what people actually think, not what they think that I want to hear. I actually think that I look very good with the elf ears. I think I look quite elf-like, honestly better than I do normally. I think that I look just interesting enough to be believable. Maybe not for Lord of the Rings given my height. I'm only 5'7", but I think I look just believable enough without being out of place. Here is my headshot. This is what I look like without a beard, so please let me know if you think that I'm actually attractive enough to be an elf somewhere. You will literally not hurt my feelings if you don't think so. I have a thick skin. You have to develop one if you want to be successful, but the story and the fans are so much more important than my ego or my opportunities. It's just fantasy. Why do you care so much? Which might literally be said in response to the length of this video, but understanding realism and believability in fantasy is quite literally the point of this channel, and specifically in the case of Lord of the Rings. If you don't understand that it's not just fantasy, I honestly fail to understand why your opinion should matter to me in the first place. And if you do understand why it's important, which is arguably why Amazon is so hell-bent on corrupting it in the first place, then that is evil. If it was only fantasy, then what difference would it make if all of the elves had fair skin as is ordained in the lore? Stop crying, because you will always have the books and the movies to entertain you, even if you don't like the Amazon show. They're just doing their own thing. Really. Remember the Trojan horse? The orcs only want a little bit of land, they just want to be understood. The orcs only want Rohan. The orcs only want Osgiliath. The age of men is over. The time of the orc has come. It literally never stops. It is a machine that continues to steamroll over everything in pursuit of power. Just enjoy your little bigot books in secrecy in the privacy of your own home and say nothing to anyone while the rest of us eternally progress forever. The rights for the books, the movies, and the games are currently up for sale. What happens if, God forbid, Amazon gets their hands on them? What happens if watching Peter Jackson's original trilogy or reading the books themselves is literally considered a dog whistle for white supremacy? If you think I'm kidding, then you haven't been paying attention. Middle-earth should reflect the modern world. So said the Tolkien activist, sorry, the Tolkien expert that they have on retainer for the show. Actually, no. Middle-earth should not reflect the modern world. Middle-earth should reflect Middle-earth, because that is what it is. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then perhaps consider that you don't actually like The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien was against apartheid. It's true. So what? Because Tolkien wasn't racist, therefore he wanted there to be black dwarfs? No, stop twisting his words. We know that this isn't true. He wrote The Lord of the Rings to replace the mythology lost when his own ancestors were conquered and lost their history, their culture, and their stories. You want to talk about having empathy for an oppressed people, and yet the foundation for this argument is that Europe was fully multicultural and racially diverse, actually because they found a bone or something. And if you believe that that isn't the case, then that is conveniently the result of Eurocentric propaganda. And even if it isn't the case, then it's just fantasy. We can do whatever we want. Why do you care so much? Please refer to the previous point. They pivot back and forth because this isn't actually an argument. It is a justification. It is a rationalization. It is literally a cope. Keep your forked tongue behind your teeth. I do not believe that you are acting in good faith. I do not trust you. Tolkien is for everyone. No one is gatekeeping who is allowed to like The Lord of the Rings. Anyone can like The Lord of the Rings. Anyone can identify with the characters and the story. Empathy is identifying with someone that isn't you. If you feel the need to fundamentally change something because it isn't good enough for you yet, then perhaps consider the fact that Lord of the Rings actually isn't for you. Not because of the color of anybody's skin, you fool, but because you lack the ability to understand what Tolkien created like an adult and instead want to create some sort of juvenile justification for inclusion because you want to make it your own thing. Again, you don't actually like The Lord of the Rings, you like the idea of liking Lord of the Rings. It could have been mine. It should be mine. Give it to me. No. I don't think I will. All of the dislikes and comments are actually bots. It is a really convenient way to deperson and invalidate any opinion that doesn't agree with you. There are publicly available extensions to see how many subscribers a poster has. You can click on their names to see if they posted content by themselves. These are real people. Verifiably real people. You can even see when it is that they joined YouTube. And if they really were bots, then where are all the responses and the likes on these comments coming from? Oh, they're just bots bots too? Okay, it must be so easy. Is it really easier to believe that 50,000 plus comments were all just bots, that some small band of trolls had the infrastructure necessary to generate that much traffic in a matter of minutes after the trailers were released, that targeted not just the original trailers, but also commented on every video about Lord of the Rings that got put out in the last week, that there is some huge conspiracy by a fringe minority that just wants to smear Amazon and watch them fail? Poor Amazon, multi-trillion-dollar company, what victims? Is it really easier to believe all of that than it is to just believe that a whole bunch of people like the Lord of the Rings, that a ton of people already knew this quote because it's literally paraphrased from the books and from the Bible, and then saw that others were posting it and then decided to post it as well? And if you believe that these numbers are being artificially pushed by an outside source, let me ask you a question. Do you believe how many likes these trailers have? Because YouTube does shady stuff with its content all the time. It's far easier for them to push something to trending. They hid the dislike button in the first place. The Amazon stream itself, which was led by the OneRing.net, privated all of its live chats. Suspicious, and then privated the video itself the next day. If all of these posts were really just bots and all of the detractors were really just trolls, then how do you explain the literal dozens, maybe hundreds of videos of fans of every race, creed, nationality, and political persuasion all currently making videos complaining about the Amazon show? Where are the tons of comments saying how much they love this new adaptation? Where are the hundreds of videos singing the praises of this new trailer? Bezos and the writers are huge Lord of the Rings fans. Interesting. They don't have the rights to the Silmarillion, and yet they are doing a show that is supposed to be based in the Second Age, essentially based off of the appendices, and they fired Tom Shippey. They have gone back and forth on what it is that they actually have the rights to since 2017 when they originally acquired them, and have told us almost nothing about their intentions of the show, other than recently to try to mitigate backlash. Well, why would they do all of these things and change the lore and not give dwarves beards and all of that stuff if they really liked the lore so much? Because they're lying to you. You literally could not convince me that Jeff Bezos sat on his pile of money and thought to himself, you know what? I've accomplished a lot in my life. I have created an infinitely successful business out of my garage. I have been to space. I own facets of every element of existence. Members of governments across the globe eat out of the palm of my hand. And I've successfully abused the people that work for me without any consequence unto myself. But you know what my true passion is? My true dream is to faithfully recreate the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, because he was just such an inspiration to me and millions of others. Not with a $1 billion budget can you convince me that that genuinely happened. And if it did, if Jeff Bezos pulls the show for reshoots because it actually isn't in keeping with his vision for the show, if his long arms in the mainstream media actually do come out and apologize to the fans for attacking them, then maybe I would even consider taking this video down and supporting them. But that isn't going to happen. What are you going to do, Amazon? Are you going to prove us wrong by apologizing to us and giving us what we want? Or are you going to prove us right by doubling down? There's only two options. I'd love more than anything to be wrong, for all of us critics to look like absolute fools, and for this show to be good, the best. That is just not going to happen. Their marketing tactic is to literally attack anybody that criticizes the show. They are purposefully withholding information that only they are privy to, just so they can point at you and laugh when you were angry and confused by the thing which was literally designed to make you angry and confused. They have the power to end this controversy right now, but they're not doing it. Think about it. Why doesn't Disa the Dwarf Princess have a beard? Why doesn't Elrond look how he's described in the books and how we're used to seeing him? They could literally put out a statement saying, we hear you. We understand your concerns. We know that this is a beloved work and we want to do it justice. There are legitimate in-story reasons why these changes exist. We are on your side. We think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Please just wait until you see the show. But they aren't doing that. They're relying on us to do that. Why aren't they saying anything? It is either because they can't, because it isn't true, or because they don't want to. They want the controversy. They are artificially creating the illusion that there are racists and sexists and bigots everywhere. They are spending $1 billion on a propaganda campaign literally designed to cause division, thus further justifying the changes to the lore in the first place. Am I supposed to just trust these people? They don't have a good track record with the Wheel of Time. Few reboots, sequels, or prequels have a good track record in general for almost the past decade. They love nothing more than to be given the benefit of the doubt, because they know that fans are naturally kind, unconfrontational, traditional people that would simply like to enjoy our Tolkien in peace, just like the hobbits. Which makes it all the more vexing when they attack us and call us toxic. Talk to a fan of The Lord of the Rings when you're first getting into it. There is literally nothing but excitement and joy at the prospect of sharing something that they love deeply with another person. We don't want to be confrontational, and they know that. Buying time by living on good faith and goodwill is literally how Sauron was able to corrupt literally everybody in Numenor and get them to take the Rings of Power. Accepting the Amazon Lord of the Rings show, whether it's good or not, is literally an esoteric reference to accepting the ring from Sauron. They are banking on you and me, sitting on our thumbs, thinking, well, I haven't seen it yet, so I won't make any judgments, in a misguided attempt to appear rational or measured or objective or kind. They have not earned my respect, nor the privileges of my trust. And attacking the fans certainly doesn't help their case. It tells me everything that I need to know. This is not what Tolkien would have wanted. I have the high ground. Oh, well, have you actually talked to Tolkien to know what he would want? Because you would need a Ouija board. The Amazon lore expert currently tweeted that. Can you believe that? They're releasing the show on the day that Tolkien left this earth. There'll probably be some placation about how they're honoring him with rebirth or something, but we know what they're doing. How disrespectful could you possibly be? The horn of Helm Hammerhand shall sound in the deep. Fell deeds awake, now for wrath, now for ruin. You wanted a war. You wanted a war with the fans, and now you've released the Kramer. In this upside-down world that we're living in, Tolkien is for everyone except for the people that actually love Tolkien and want to see his work preserved. I am pulling every Amazon link from my channel. You can check. I've already done it. They're gone. I used to think it was smart, right? Jeff Bezos was going to make that money anyway. Everybody orders from Amazon, so I might as well get some of that money too. But I'm done. I will still put the links to the things that I use if I can find them from another source. I won't make any money that way, at least for now, but this is far more important. Is that going to do anything other than hurt myself? Probably not, but I'm doing it on principle. And hopefully to inspire some action in others, because this has to stop. Should we wait? Should we wait until the armies of Mordor are already on our doorstep before we decide to take up arms? The orcs haven't killed any of us yet, so maybe they won't. Let's just wait and see. Should we look into the Palantir and see the inevitable destruction of our world and then simply give up? If we don't put a stop to this scorched earth tactic, the fires of industry burning everything that we love, all that is good in this world here at Lord of the Rings, the grandfather of all modern fantasy, then when are we going to do something? This is literally the last bastion. There is zero difference between the forces of Middle-earth uniting to beat back the forces of darkness. Just stand their posts in the face of an army bred to destroy the world of men. Zero difference between defending the last city of men, Minas Tirith, in the face of certain death and defending Lord of the Rings. I will die on this hill. You will not take my son from me. You shall not pass. Stories are more important than anything. We know that and they know that. It's why they're trying to take them from us, because our history is what makes us worth remembering.
What are we holding on to, Sam? There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.